Okay, calm down.
Now let's look at the bad. Let's take a look at the bad.
It has a new piece in the Wall Street Journal titled Biden versus Trump in 2024. Don't be
He's talking about Peggy Noonan.
so sure. Peggy writes this. Look at people's faces when you say, looks like it'll be Biden and Trump. Those faces tell you everything. The soft wince, the shake of the head, the sigh. I agree with those who say the problem isn't only Joe Biden's age, but the implication his age carries. That if he is reelected, there's a significant chance Kamala Harris will become president. On the Republican side, the great not Trump option, the consistent number 2 in the polls, has been deflating. It is too early to say Ron DeSantis' candidacy won't work, but it feels like it won't work. But life is surprising. Here's the real point of this column, Peggy writes. If it starts to seem clear that America is once again locked into a Trump-Biden race, I think the electorate is going to get frisky. I don't see people just accepting it. I see pushback and little rebellions. So, Gene Robinson, your reaction there and what that pushback and rebellion might look like. The fact of the matter is that at this point, we've got a lot of legal trouble out there for Donald Trump, but at this point, he is head and shoulders above the rest of the field, including Ron DeSantis, and nobody's going to make a real run on the other side at Joe Biden.
Nobody's going to make a real run on the other side of Joe Biden. I mean, to the extent that that's true, as in nobody's getting coverage going after Biden, that's in part because you haven't had RFK or Marianne Williamson on your show.
Right.
It's such a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Look, front runners don't always get their party's nominations and don't always become president. However, I don't think anybody's going to challenge President Biden, and Donald Trump is way ahead. And
so what are RFK and Marianne doing?
Right. Yeah. And why is it like, well, we know why, but when they talk about the Republican primaries, they have no problem. I've never seen anybody omit Ron DeSantis from the conversation.
I mean, to be fair, to play devil's advocate, he's higher profile, right? Because he's already governor.
Sure.
But certainly people, I mean, he's not polling that well and people don't discount him because of that. And as you pointed out in the past, Brad, like Marianne Williamson polled at 10% in one poll, Bobby Kennedy at 19%. These same people who are ignoring these people, or either ignoring or dismissing them, are the same ones who talked about how significant, Mayor Pete was, or Kamala Harris, and they were doing way worse.
Yeah, or Amy Klobuchar.
Amy Klobuchar, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, again, it's just wild how things change in a relatively short amount of time, because I feel like not too terribly long ago, it would have been, it was like common wisdom or just the rule of thumb. Like if your favorability was less than 50%, that was a big deal. That was like really big trouble.
Yeah.
Right now, I believe Biden's favorability is at what, like 38%, something like that.
It's definitely under 50. Yeah. It's low.
way under 50. And it's just being treated as like a coronation, as like an inevitability. Right. And I guess what really, look, I wouldn't be happy about it, but like if the people were given it was just an open and fair, and then they, honest to goodness, they were like, we want Biden again. Okay. I wouldn't like it, but okay. But this, where it's just so clear, the manufacturing and just hiding or censoring of any dissent or challenge, it just it's very upsetting.
I was very excited because I saw an email from New Yorker, as in New Yorker magazine. It said in the subject, the limits of Joe Biden's calls for press freedom. Let's see, do you have that, Brad? Okay, so I got an email. I got an email from the New Yorker Daily, and it said the limits of Joe Biden's call for press freedom. And I was so excited, and I was like, they're finally covering Julian Assange. And I then clicked on it, and here's the article. The limits of Joe Biden's calls for press freedom. After decades of exposing corruption in Guatemala, the journalist Jose Ruben Zamora has been jailed. Why can't the U.S. help him? Now, I'm sure that he has a valid claim for freedom, But I think it's rich that the New Yorker hasn't asked why can't the U.S. release its own political prisoner, Julian Assange.
Right.
And speaking of which, I should tell people that Wednesday at 4 p.m., I'm going to be there. A bunch of people are going to be there. There's an event. It's World Press Freedom Day. And there's an event for Julian Assange. And Randy Credico will be there. Margaret Kimberly, Margaret Kunstler, and Chris Hedges. And it is at 4 p.m. in front of MSNBC. And that is, where is that?
Isn't that around like Rockefeller Center?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll put a link to it in the description. So there's that. So make sure you come out for that. And you know what's interesting, by the way, while Biden is silent on Julian Assange, I noticed the other day this tweet from RFK. I noticed this today, actually, I should say. I noticed this tweet from RFK. Instead of championing free speech, the U.S. actively persecutes journalists and whistleblowers. I'll pardon brave truth tellers like Julian Assange and investigate the corruption and crimes they expose. This isn't the Soviet Union. The America I love doesn't imprison dissidents. That's from RFK. Now let's see what Marianne Williamson, a longtime defender of Julian Assange, had to say. This was about the White House Correspondents' Dinner. She said, hard to take a dinner honoring press freedom seriously when the name Julian Assange isn't even mentioned. So it's things like this, by the way, I believe, that explains why Biden doesn't want to debate. Because imagine having two people on that stage normalizing the principle of free press, normalizing freedom of speech, normalizing not having political prisoners, or normalizing speaking out against having political prisoners. This is why they can't have this debate, because when you have one person, let alone two people making these comments, your hypocrisy is exposed. And that's what they are used to not having happen to them.
And I don't know if you had seen this, Katie. I'm sorry, I don't have it at hand, but within the last couple of days, I believe it was reported on that during a recent interview or press briefing with Biden, it was caught like on camera. He had a piece of paper, I believe, that showed he had the names of each reporter, the questions that they were going to be asking him, and then the answers he was going to be giving him. I mean, basically just laying out, because in order for that to be possible, you would have to have coordination between the White House and all of the press there.
Right. Of course.
But the point being, they were, I mean, it's also not to mention making sure that he didn't forget someone's name or forget what he was supposed to say. They were able to control what was being asked, what the answers were going to be. And like you just said, and this is a really great point, I think, that if they were to have those debates, I mean, you're dealing with, you know, two people in RFK and Marianne Williamson that I can't see how they would be able to do that in that sort of
even if they wanted to.
Even if
they
they couldn't plan exactly what the questions or what they were going to say, and then thus prepare Biden for what he would say in reply, and it would just be a train wreck for Biden.
Right, exactly. But and we have a revolving door, which is made clear by look at Simone Sanders, who was Biden's campaign advisor. She now has a show. Then look at Jem Psaki. She now has a show on MSNBC, and she was his spokeswoman. So it's just so explicit.